Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Games and Writers. I'm your host, Craig A. Hart, and today I have David M. Taylor II. David is an award-winning author, songwriter, producer, and playwright. His latest children's book, Diary of a Smart Black Kid, 6th Grade, has become an instant favorite of parents, teachers, and kids alike. His latest fantasy book, Lucifer, Soldiers, Serpents, and Sin, Book 1, is an internationally best-selling book. As a songwriter, Mr. Taylor writes commercials, rap, gospel, adult contemporary, and musical theater. He has done commercial work for McDonald's and Disney, has written for Justin Bieber and Usher. He put the late, great Cuba Gooding Sr. back on the charts after 30 years, and he's worked with jazz great Dave Koz and the James Taylor Singers. He's a co-composer for the smash hit theater production Eye of the Storm, the Bayard Rustin musical, nominated for 3 Black Theater Alliance Awards. He's the proud father of 2, as well as a lover of football, pizza, and a good glass of lemonade. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So your book, Lucifer, Soldiers, Serpents, and Sin, Book 1, A Clash of Lightning and Thunder, which, by the way, probably has the coolest title ever. That's the book I know you most by. We were at a book signing event together, actually, at one point, and that's one of the books you had, and so that's what I'm familiar with of you. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that book come about?
Well, it started from several ideas. One idea was I wondered what would happen if you were the coolest of the cool kids, and then the next day you did something, you got kicked out. What would that do to you? I also wondered, there's a scripture, Luke 10:18, where Jesus says, I beheld Satan fall as lightning from heaven. And that's all he says. I'm like, what did that look like? How did that happen? What are the logistics?
Yeah, we're missing a lot of drama here.
Right. How you just casually throw out how evil comes to earth, just kind of conversation. So I started researching that. And then I also thought about what would it do to you if yesterday you were this beautiful, glorious, sparkly, talented, refined thing. And then you look at yourself like in a pond or a lake and you see this twisted, gnarly, ugly, clawed, bat-winged thing looking back at you. And so those were the things that really initiated my thought patterns into, wait, how did this happen and what would that look like? So that's what got me going.
Interesting. Now, you're talking about as if the book is from Lucifer's viewpoint. Is that actually how the book goes?
Yes and no. It's a telling of events. He's definitely the main character. It definitely follows his progression from birth through everything that happens. But there are a lot of other characters there. All the archangels are there. Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael. And Lucifer has a bunch of different characters interacting with him. Don't want to give away any spoilers. But basically, yes, but there's other things that are going on as well. And I've expanded the story world, so there's other stories I have set in that setting that are a part of this universe.
That's called The Realm. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. I have the trailer for Lucifer, so let's go ahead and play that.
Okay.
During his first 1,000 years of life in the realm, Lucifer becomes an authentic superstar. And then it happens. An unexpected rift between Lucifer and Michael inaugurates Lucifer on the path of rebellion. As the pressure mounts toward the impending clash of lightning and thunder, Lucifer prepares to unleash something the brethren have never seen before. Lucifer's rebellion will change the realm forever. Lucifer, Soldiers, Serpents, and Sin. Book 1, A Clash of Lightning and Thunder. Available now on Amazon.
That's so cool. The other thing I like about that book, who did the cover for that book?
That was kind of a joint effort, me and the cover designer with the publisher. So we got some of the basic pictures, but then I added everything on that cover is significant. So the color scheme, the tattoos, everything you see on that cover actually speaks to something in the book.
Okay. Yeah,
so I'll say me and the publisher.
Yeah. No, it's a great cover.
Thank you.
So it says book one. Will there be
Hmm.
more in the series?
Yes, it's a trilogy. I've been working so hard. Lord have mercy. People have been asking me for a while. When's the second book coming out? Well, I've been working really hard trying to get it out, but also trying to get it right
Yeah, yeah.
because the scope of the story I'm telling is really, really huge. And then you obviously have to adhere to the mythology that you've created because if there's one thing us geeks hate, it's when you break your own rules.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I'm on Twitter every day with my geek friends, and we're always picking apart everything we read down to the minutia. So since I know my audience, I've got to work really hard to get my details right because there's a lot of little details. For example, the environment is a character.
Mm-hmm.
Environment reacts to the characters in the story, kind of based on where they are. And then there are changes that happen in the heavenly realm, which I know, regardless of your religious background, it strikes me that people seem to have a static picture of whatever their view of heaven is.
Yeah.
But the picture that I paint is one that is changing and adjusting and making changes and kind of responding to the events that are happening because it's basically war in heaven. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's very integral to what happens in the story that the environment and the characters are reacting to things in what we would call real time, and even though it's outside of what I would call Earth time.
Yeah.
So it's a real, even though it's my imagination, I unfold it like it was happening, as a linear progression, as it were. And so all those details have to be addressed. So I've been working hard to try to get all of that right.
So I mean, it sounds pretty unique. I'm struggling to come up with a book that has done the same thing. Like, is there anybody out there who has done kind of the same thing, or are you trailblazer here? Because I can't think of one.
There are plenty of books. See, when I did my research, I studied angelology and ancient lore and that which is myth and that which is religious text, because sometimes they're different things, and then sometimes people think they're the same thing. And
Yeah.
people outside of a particular faith can't possibly look at it like people that are inside of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I studied the Bible. I studied in Greek and Hebrew translations. I studied Jewish mythology. I studied some Baha'i stuff. I studied some stuff I can't pronounce. It's Indian stuff. I don't
Yeah.
remember the name. I studied a lot of different things, and I found a lot of different, because there are people that are deep in angelology. So to directly
Mm-hmm.
answer your, there's definitely books out there that talk about kind of these behind the scenes spiritual wars and the different archangels and Lucifer and all that. But I don't think anybody quite did it this way to kind
Yeah.
of show you using the Christian Bible as a basis, and yet giving a fictional account of what had to be real events, since there's no description of them. You know what I mean? So we
Yeah.
kind of use our imagination.
Yeah.
So
And I find that just very fascinating. And I grew up. I have a Christian background,
uh-huh,
and it seemed like there were certain topics that were kind of off limits.
uh-huh,
Like, you didn't mess with it. And so
uh-huh.
what I found interesting about your book is that obviously you're coming at it from a certain worldview, but at the same time, you're willing, and you were talking about, you're willing to explore other things and incorporate other things and all of that. So I found that, that's a very refreshing mix, whereas you can have a certain worldview and you can respect the sanctity of certain things, but you can also go at things with a creative mindset, and that opens up all kinds of possibilities for as you, because this is something to me which is pretty unique, and it only enabled you to do this because you were willing to expand your sphere a little bit.
Well, that's kind of how I think. I don't think there are races. I think there is one race,
Hmm.
the human race.
Right.
Problem that we have as people is pride. We are
Mm.
busy telling God and telling life how it's supposed to go. That's why there's racism.
Hmm.
You didn't invent people,
Hmm.
but you're trying to say these people aren't worthy, or these people don't count, or these people don't
Right.
deserve to live, or this is your place, as if you invented them. See,
Right.
that's just
Yeah.
pride. And so the way I see life is I believe with my whole heart that God created mankind in his image. But what that tells me is that God himself then is so unlimited. In any given generation, there's 7.5 billion people, and each one of us carry a portion of that image. So what that tells me is that my view of God is too small. And that's what I think religion does to people. It tries to make you squeeze God down into something you can fit in your mind, something that's safe, something you can control, and blah, 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 blah. And that cannot possibly be the truth when I look at the world around me. We will live and die, and we will know less than a tenth of a percent of the people that are on the earth.
Yeah.
Yet we're so convinced that we're right about everything. And I'm like, you don't even know everybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're never going to know everybody. And God is expressing himself to all these different kinds of people.
Right.
So the other thing about, you said about some stuff to leave it alone, because a lot of people are like that about the book of Revelation, about eschatology in general, the study of the end of the world, or original sin, which is a lot of what I'm dealing with. And my view on that is, if it's in the Bible, it's fair game. Why would it be in the Bible if we weren't supposed to look at it?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it just, and one of the things that I struggled with was you weren't allowed to even ask the question. And I guess I've always been of the mind where, knowledge is not going to hurt you.
right.
If you believe in certain truths, then honest questions and knowledge shouldn't be something terrifying. That should be, something we would welcome. And, if it does reveal a weakness in our belief system, then maybe that's a belief system we can work on. Like you're talking about the whole, the racism that we've been dealing with forever. It kind of seems that, why are we still having to deal with this? Why is it not why is it still a problem? Because I don't want to diminish it. But at the same time, as I believe as you, that we're a human race, and it boggles my mind, because I feel like if more people were thinking outside of their little boxes, I think it's kind of what you're saying, that we wouldn't have a lot of these issues. So I find that so frustrating. As humans, it's like, why haven't we figured this out yet?
Well, if you think about it, we struggle with the same exact issues from generation to generation.
Yeah.
They might change form or style, but it's the same issues. Just, ask your grandparents, your great-grandparents, if they're still alive. Listen to your children or your cousins or your nieces. Talk to people as young as you can and listen to what their lives are like. Styles change, fashion changes, technology changes, but the problems that we struggle with are exactly the same. They have to do with identity and self-acceptance and healthy faith. They have to do with resources and how do you generate them and how do you manage them and who gets what, and what do you do with people that aren't capable or as capable. And I don't mean necessarily any type of challenge people. I mean, what if you can't afford your health insurance?
Yeah.
Because we keep saying who should pay.
Right.
So other countries say, well, the government will pay. That's part of your tax structure. America says, oh, no. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It doesn't matter what generation you're from.
Yeah.
The style changes and the nomenclature changes, but the actual problems are exactly the same. And so that's kind of where I'm going with my book. One of my spiritual goals in writing the book was to pose this question: why do bad things happen to good people? Because every human that walks this planet has hit a point in their life where they've had to say, why did this happen to me? I don't understand. Why, God, why? Why am I going through this? And that's what happens when you don't understand. There's a malevolent force out there who made it their business to bring bad things to you. And so that's why I want to talk about where that comes from, because that is universal. That happens to all humans, regardless of your faith affiliation.
Right. And, you're talking about, these problems, and we've been dealing with it forever, and it could just be part of the human condition in a way. But it also, that's part of my problem with, say, for example, a purely humanistic viewpoint, because it then kind of guarantees we're going to have ongoing human problems. And the problem with, I guess the arrogance of humanity kind of bothers me, because we are only as intelligent as our most intelligent person. And I find that incredibly limiting and kind of a recipe for disaster, and may partly explain why we continue to have these same problems, because we so often rely on our own ability, our own intelligence, our own ways of dealing with problems, and yet how's that working out for us? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, because here's what we do. Every single one of us, we draw our moral and ethical lines, then we step back and say, I'm right, and then there's something wrong with the rest of y'all.
Yeah.
And then we spend the rest of our lives defending that position because, of course I'm right.
Right.
It's the rest of y'all. and so then, we don't agree on, there's more than one way to govern a country.
Yeah.
So there are different groups of people on earth that have different governing systems. So we all say, well, it's obvious that ours is right. Then it's the rest of y'all.
Yeah.
And so you can plug that in anything, food, financial structures, educational structures, family structures, criminal and civil litigation. It doesn't matter. We all draw the lines and say, I'm right.
Yeah.
It's y'all.
And that's an impossible place to start, because
that's right.
First of all, it doesn't allow you to. It's sort of like you go into a debate, and your opening statement is, "Hello, everybody. I just wanted to know that I'm correct in everything, and I'm just putting up with the rest of you idiots." And then, okay, carry on. And, well, that ends the conversation. Nobody's going to want to talk to you. You're not going to change anybody's mind. It's just pointless.
Right.
And this sort of brings us into the next. You've written some books for children as well. Tell us about Diary of a Smart Black Kid. Who's the main character there? Oh,
man. Okay, the first book is Diary of a Smart Black Kid, 6th grade, and his name is Baron Winters. He's coming out of the summer of 5th grade and entering in his first year of junior high school. And he's dealing with everything that comes along with being smart and black and geeky, because those are 3 different worlds. One of the things that America does is America teaches social structure no longer through the nuclear family, but now through media. So if you're an 80s kid, you remember all those movies like The Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
A nerd, a geek, a jock, a princess, a brain, a weirdo, that kind of thing. Right. And so that's what we think people are now. And you have your little section of the cafeteria. And you will discover as you become an adult that high school never ends.
Yeah.
And people keep saying, okay, the black people, y'all over there. Okay, the geeks, okay, y'all over there. Okay, it used to be Barbies and Kens, now it's Chads and Stacy's. Okay, you guys over here. Okay, the theater people. Okay, you got like that. That's the way we think.
Right.
And so the way I believe humans are knit together, I believe each individual human is a unique work of art. And your challenge, if you grow up in America, is people are going to continue to try to impose upon you those stereotypical ideas. So you're black, so you must be this. Oh, I'm sorry, you're also a geek, where there aren't a lot of black geeks or black nerds called blurred. So, okay, yeah. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, you're smart too. Okay, well, then we don't know what to do with you. We don't know what that is. So this book is about that struggle.
Yeah, and it seems to me that not only is the problem being put into these categories, but you also can face some real backlash if you try to leave your assigned category. Does Barron deal with that at all? Absolutely.
There's a chapter in the book where he talks about which cafeteria table should I sit at. Do I sit with black kids? Do I sit with the geeky kids? Geeky kids tend to be more ethnically diverse, because one thing about geeks, man, we get together because we love the story worlds.
Right.
The few groups that isn't really about a barrier to entry or your demographics. It's kind of come one, come all. If you love whatever you love, man, if you love superheroes, if you love fantasy worlds, whatever you love, let's enjoy it together. So that's one thing. But then there's the stereotypical expectations of being black and what that means. And so, so he's got to deal with that on and on. His best friend is Asian in the book. So there's that whole thing, and they have really good relationships with each other's families. But he notices that there are cultural differences when he's at home versus when he's at his friend's house. So I talk about all that.
Fascinating. So if I feel like, or maybe I should ask, shouldn't I feel, maybe ask you the question, do you think that we as a culture are too focused on labeling, which I guess really is just another name for putting boxes around people? Do you think that's a real problem then?
When you say, you mean American culture?
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you got to remember, our culture was built on slave labor and cheap labor.
Mm-hmm.
The way they sold those ideas was that this group of people is the other. So they exist to be slaves or beasts of burden, or if we can't enslave them, they exist to work for cheap. Mm-hmm. So we're the real Americans, we're the rightful, however you want to define it, and these people are not. That's the way our country is founded. So when you sell a country on that narrative, it gets ingrained in your thinking.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And so that's why we have, I'll give you another example. I went to Japan several years ago, and it completely changed my life. It was one of the best experiences of my life. And I would recommend that everyone travel abroad if you haven't. But before we went, we had to look at the propaganda of World War II. And it was really ugly when they were, it was just some of the images and the pictures, that they were painting to try to say these people were monstrous. And that is what we as Americans do better than anything else, is create and sell an image. Now, when I went over there, what I found were people from all different walks of life. When we went to Hiroshima, you can't go to Hiroshima and stay the same. They have a wall that has all the letters they've written to the people in the world that say, please stop nuclear testing. Because the people of Hiroshima know what that's like, and they have a big origami monument of 1,000 origami cranes, and then inside the museum, they have a mock-up, and it looks like the Terminator world. So they show you what it looked like, and it looks just like the original Terminator when you flash forward and you see Kyle Reese in the bunker underground. It looks like that. And they even have a stone slab where a man was flash fried and turned into dust, and his picture is on the stone. You see what I'm saying? Oh. See, when you see stuff like that, and so that's what dropping the bomb did. So they show you what the city looked like before the bomb, and then after, they show you people on fire drop into the river, but you can't put out nuclear fire with water.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
They jump in the river and they're still inflamed, and just, right. So that's what I mean when I say, I'm saying all that to say that when you encounter people and you understand people as people and you learn from their culture, you see that we have so much more in common than we have differently. And you see that all this time, you've been playing this little movie in your head about whoever you thought those people were. And then as you begin to interact and just, expand your life and talk to people, you realize that people are people and you've been sold an image. And sometimes, I can speak for, in terms of the African-American frame, for African-Americans, it's always one represents all. So if one black person does it, that's all y'all, okay? There's 42 million or so black people in America, but it doesn't matter if Denzel does it, if Chris Rock does it, if Flavor Flav does it, if Barack Obama is like I did it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's part of the narrative, specifically for African Americans and other groups too. But the point I'm trying to make is that we weren't ever founded with the idea of us all being together. That's not, So we may be fighting to birth that view now, but that's why it's always a fight.
That's one of the best answers to that question I've ever heard. I mean, that was really eloquent and well done. And I think your point about it possibly birthing that new way of thinking, may be spot on, because I do feel like the things that we've been dealing with as of late, past few years, it does have the feeling of travail about it. Kind of like, growing pains almost, where it's just, this is terrible. It's awful to go through. But at the same time, and maybe this is just me being optimistic, but it almost feels like always darkest before the dawn sort of thing, where you were like, well, maybe we're actually going somewhere with this. Maybe we are having a valuable conversation about things that are really uncomfortable, and it makes people, it's awkward and all that stuff. But maybe there's something to be gained from it as well, because you can't get anywhere without a difficult conversation. And when you're dealing with issues that are hundreds of years old, and as you say, are ingrained in American culture, that's not going to change easily.
Right, or overnight. That's right.
Go ahead.
See, the thing about that is another issue that we have to deal with is, I can hold my hands up, the issues that we're actually dealing with are multifaceted and intertwined. But what people do is they talk about them like it's just one issue, and that's not the truth. So if you want to deal with the historical oppression of certain groups, or if you want to deal with marginalization, that's one thing. If you want to deal with getting attention from a mainstream audience, that's different. And people are talking about them now like they're the same thing. So if you're part of a group where you feel like there have been some injustices in the history of your group of people, that's one issue. But if you want to create content, or you're trying to build something and you start screaming, people don't like it because I'm a member of this group, that is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
They may not like it because they may just not like it. They have a right not to like it. Right. You know what I'm saying? They may not like it because it may be poor quality.
Yeah.
They may not like it because it may literally be the best thing ever, and it's not my cup of tea.
Right.
But when you start saying, oh, well, you have to like this because I'm black, or you don't like it because I'm black, that's not the issue. I'm trying to write a good story, and you have the freedom to like or dislike or be neutral or ignore my story, because that's your life. And you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But now they're trying to say that you must accept my content or my presentation or whatever. And if you don't, then now you're this label. And that is not the same thing as trying to deal with historically marginalized groups or people that feel like, even though I'm an American citizen, I haven't received my full benefits as granted me by the Constitution. See, that's a matter of interpreting the law and then enforcing the law and applying the law. That's one thing. That's different from you have to like me or I deserve a TV show because people like me have never had one. That ain't the same thing.
It almost, I guess one thing that worries me about that is that when you do kind of enforce that onto people, there's a danger, I fear, of a lot of resentment, which is then counterproductive where I think we want to go. Which is, I don't know if you want to, call it equality of opportunity over equality of outcome. I don't know if that's necessarily what we're talking about. But I just like feel when you attack these things, like and then talk about racism or whatnot, you attack them in a certain way and it forces them underground and then creates like an extremist point of movement almost. And that, there's a real danger of that, I fear.
Well, again, everything you just said was about 5 or 6 issues. So let me just deal with one of them. Here's a basic principle. Americans do not fight for justice, and Americans do not fight for what's right. Americans fight for privilege. Our country was built on privilege. It wasn't built on justice per se. It wasn't built on the same rules for everybody. And so many times people confuse a justice fight with a privilege fight. You want to fight for justice. That which is just means you know what the rules are, you know what the punishments and the rewards are, and it's the same for everybody. That's just. To give you a living example, it's why I love them, the Olympics. If you want to see what justice would look like, okay, the high bar. Here's the bar. You got 3 tries to clear that bar. I don't care what country you come from. I don't care what color you are. I don't care how tall or short you are. I don't care if you ate a Snickers bar this morning. You got 3 tries to clear that bar. If you clear that bar, if you touch it and the bar doesn't fall, it counts.
Right.
If you touch the bar and it falls, it doesn't count. You got 3 tries. If you do it in 3 tries or less, you can go on to the next level. If you can't do it, I don't care who you are, you got to go home.
Mm-hmm.
That's what justice would look like.
Right.
That's not what we have. Okay.
Yeah.
We have never had that.
Yeah.
And so people confuse a justice fight with a privilege fight. You saw somebody else do something and you said, hey, why can't I do that? It's not fair. Okay. That's a privilege fight.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's right or wrong in and of itself. I'm saying you need to understand the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so that's where people get confused, because once you get the idea in your head that a privilege fight is actually a justice fight, you think you're fighting for justice, but that's not. You're just trying to do what you saw other people do, because never once did you say, is it right for me to do that?
Hmm.
You said they did it, so why can't I do it? And that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll give you another living example. When OJ was cleared the very first time back in 95, a lot of African Americans said that the African Americans on the jury said, we've been watching other people get away with crimes for a while, so it's about time we should too.
Mm.
If 2 lives were ended in murder, that don't have nothing to do with the color of the skin of the people involved.
Mm-hmm.
Because if 2 lives were ended, then there needs to be an answer. That's justice. But if it's, well, other people have been getting away with murder, so we should too, okay, that's privilege. And that's not a right privilege. Just because other people have done heinous things. So now you say, well, I should be able to do heinous things because they did.
Right.
See, that's not just. That's not right. That's privilege.
Yeah.
That's what we're fighting for most of the time. And, you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's why people get angry and confused, because now they start to believe. I just talked about this at Capricorn a couple of years ago. If you have a pie and another group has gotten the majority share of the pie and you want to divide the pie differently, the one thing you can't do is make more pie.
Mm.
So if you, again, I'll speak for African Americans. If African Americans had 10% and other groups had 50%, and then other groups had the remaining 40, okay. But if you're saying, I want 50%, you must understand that everybody can't have 50%.
Right.
And so that's why people are angry, because they believe now, whatever group I am, if I've been marginalized historically or even recently, I'm supposed to get the 50% that the Chads and the Stacys have had. And that is not physically, literally possible. See what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So I guess the question is, like, what is something that, and I guess you partially answered this, but what is something that we as individuals can do on a personal level to start addressing this in our own lives?
Well, the first thing that we would need to do is we would need to have an education that's based on truth, facts. We would need to go back to a basic understanding of how life itself works, because we have gotten away from that. And the way life itself works is that everything is expected to produce at its capacity. So the expectation for the stone or the pebble is not the same expectation for the mountain. And the expectation for the hummingbird is not the same expectation for the eagle. And the expectation for the goldfish is not the expectation for the whale. So every living thing is expected to produce what it produces at its level. So we as humans would have to start to understand that my job is to discover my capacity and then try to create things and make my contribution to the world based on what I've been given. So if I'm not 6'2", I'm probably not going to be a basketball player. So I can spend my years trying to play ball if I want to, but maybe that's not my strength. And I can't say that the NBA is racist because they didn't pick me. Maybe I can't play basketball. How about that? So we would have to go back to that kind of basic understanding. And like I said, regardless, because I know people will argue about faith differences, but regardless of faith differences, we all live in the same nature. So regardless of what you believe about God, the pine tree you look at is the same pine tree I look at. And so when we look at nature, there's not like a white pine tree and a black pine tree, and that there's not that. So when you look at nature, you can see the way the world around you operates is that each living thing, like you don't expect grass to grow as tall as trees. Once grass gets up anywhere like around your knees, you're in trouble. So the expectation is based on the nature of the thing and the gifts that thing has been given. And so if we look at life and have that understanding, then the thing to do is, okay, what have I been given? What am I good at? What can I do? Let me try to maximize that. And in that, you will find joy in living when you try to maximize what you've been given. But if you spend your whole life saying, well, what's Craig got over there? What's that over there in Craig's house? What has Craig got? Well, I don't think that's fair. I don't think I like that. See, now you're never going to be happy. You are never going to be happy. It will not happen. You see what I mean? So that's one thing we can do as individuals. That's what I've done with my children. I'm like, mind your business. Whatever God has put in your hands, whatever gifts, whatever opportunities, mind that business and try to maximize that. And that's also the way I live, because you can't talk at your kids. You got to live by example. But I'm saying that's one thing we can do as individuals is, instead of what are they doing over there, and oh, they've got more than me, and that's not fair, and I should have everything they have, and I should have equal resources, equal attention, equal outcomes. And if I don't have that, then we need to take some resources to get me to be the same as them, because that's just not fair. That's never going to go anywhere.
Right.
But when I turn and say, okay, what do I have in my hand? Okay, well, let me write some books. Let me write some music. Let me try to be a better songwriter. Let me try to be a better author. And then I'll find my joy in living. And then I don't have time to worry about what they doing over there.
Building on the previous answer, what advice would you have then for parents maybe who are dealing with a creative child who may not fit traditional stereotypes, like it sounds like Barron does?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that is one of my favorite subjects, so I'm so glad you brought it up. The answer to that question is there are particular markers of the creative child. When you are a creative child, you are super sensitive, and there's a reason for that. It's because when you have creativity, your antenna is up all the time. Mm-hmm. And what you do is you take the energy of the world around you and the energy of your experiences, and you transmute them into art. And the muse is always talking to you, but you can't control when she talks to you. So that's why so many crazy people are accused of being crazy. That's not it. It's just that it's 2:30 in the morning and this idea wakes me up. So I got to write it down or else I'm going to lose it. And you have to train yourself to be that way, because you will discover when you ignore ideas, 6 months to a year later, you're going to see them from somebody else. And you're going to say, wait a minute, I thought of that. Because you don't care nothing about your sleep, okay? And so when you have a creative child, you've got to work harder on self-acceptance. Creative people tend to be introverted. You spend a lot of your life in your head, which means you don't have strong social skills. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. You need them, but you need to learn that as an introvert, you're always going to recharge when you're alone. And you got to accept that. Right. You're going to spend energy when you're out interacting with people, and then when you get alone again, then you can kind of gather some energy back up, and that's how you're going to feel better. And don't let people make you feel like you're wrong for being that way. And then if you're a visionary, being creative is one level. Being visionary is different, like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, Tony Stark from Iron Man. When you see something other people can't see, and you see something big enough to change the world, very few people are going to believe you until you do it.
Right.
And it's your parents that support you. Your parents are some of the best sources of support to say, well, I believe you could be the first mayor of this city, or I believe you could be the first governor. There's never been a governor of our state in this demographic, but I believe you can do it. Like Chicago now is going to have a black female mayor for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a whole lot of people would have never believed, you know, such a thing could be possible.
Right.
and so it's getting in there as a parent and holding your child close enough to protect them, but giving them freedom at the same time to create their works and see their visions. And it's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah. And, you know, on a personal level, like that's something that I'm struggling with because I have two small children, and one of them in particular I can already see is going to have that, you know, creative, like, introverted mind about them. And my struggle, I think, as a stay-at-home dad is going to be, well, partially I think it's going to be counteracting the school, because I don't think schools are geared toward that sort of child.
That's right.
And I think too often they struggle, you know, and so how, you know, trying to figure out, like, how do I counteract that, you know?
Okay. All right. Well, let me give you a couple principles. First thing to understand is that whenever you hear one negative word, you need 5 to 7 words to counter it. That's everybody. So if your child has experienced any type of bullying or any type of anything that chips away at their self-identity, you're going to have to tell them a minimum of 5 times, no, daddy thinks you're smart. No, you're smart. No, you're very capable. You can do this. No, daddy thinks you're good. No, you can do it without a problem. At least 5 times. When you're dealing with the artistic child, those words are felt times 10 because the soul is more sensitive. And so when somebody says something like that to you as a creative person, you can literally get suicidal. Yeah. You can just, oh my God, nobody likes me. Nobody likes my book. What am I living? What am I doing? That's why people act that way, because the intensity of that negative energy is magnified in a creative soul. So you have to work even harder as the parent to get those positive words in there, to say, hey, well, you know what? If we didn't win this time, or if that is not your best work, hey, you know what? We're going to paint another picture.
Right.
Because I believe in you. You know what? We're going to run that race. Maybe you didn't win it this time, but we're going to keep training and we're going to run again. Hey, you know what? Maybe, you know, they didn't like your poetry, but that's okay. That was this time. That kind of thing. You've got to kind of be on that as a parent, because if you let that negativity pile up in the creative child, it's magnified. And that's why we get angry, suicidal, crazy with our relationships, because people are in a lot of pain.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. And and again, it rings true because I'm seeing it like almost in real time. It's so true. Well, we could almost end it right there, and it would be perfect.
Well, let me take a moment to plug an upcoming book.
Yeah.
I have an upcoming book called My Alphabet is Musical. And I'm actually using musical terms to teach ABCs.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Nobody does that.
Yeah. No, I can't.
So I'm going to do something for us. Once and for all, I'm going to make a book. If you already know your child's got some music in them, we're going to start studying musical terms. You're going to love it. I'm so excited about it. That's coming out probably before the end of this month.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, David M. Taylor II, thanks so much for joining us on Games and Writers. I really appreciate it. This is, one of the better conversations. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me. It was great.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.